wait for you guys to log on. You know the drill. Hi. All right. Somebody's here. Maybe give it a couple more minutes. Oh, you guys, I ate so much earlier. Yay, Drakeson. Perfect. All right. I feel like I haven't seen our crew in a while. Like you, King of the Hunt. I feel like Hazard does come in here, but where's Treacherously at? All right. So, you guys know the drill. Today's Monday Fun Day. I will be doing a live after this on my OnlyFans. I'm wearing a little sexy set that I can't show you on Twitch, but you will see it on and very likely off of me if you choose to join the live after. So I'm going to be here. It's 6:30 Pacific at 8. So I'm going to be here for an hour and a half, and we're going to talk about not sexy stuff. And then if you want sexy shit, that's going to be at 8 on my OnlyFans. You can go to jasminejafar.me and you will see all my links, and that will be the one at the top. Hey, okay. I'm seeing some new names. All right. So I always feel like I just say, oh, I'm going to be live on Twitch, and people don't know what I'm going to be talking about. And so then they think I'm doing something sexy. And then I'm like, all right, guys, today we're talking about First Amendment in, well, I guess you could see it from the title, but we're talking about First Amendment in schools. Specifically, we're going to focus on K through 12 because that is where the First Amendment is the most restricted. Once you go to college, it's actually your First Amendment rights are pretty expansive, like almost to the extent that they would be just as a normal citizen. But from K through 12, it's far more restricted, as we're going to talk about. So I'm going to focus on that, even though I don't think any of you are in K through 12. If you are, I mean, I guess you could watch this, but I don't find myself to be a content creator for high schoolers. Back up a little. Nope, that's going to be at 8 o'clock on my OnlyFans. We're going to talk about, this is a school class. We're talking about First Amendment in schools. So let us get started. So as we all know, and when I say First Amendment, I'm going to be talking about the free speech element in this stream. So it's going to be basically our rights to express ourselves and have the freedom to express our beliefs, and how much of that do you retain in school. So there's some really pivotal cases that maybe some of you have heard of, even if you've taken like some of these I remember learning in high school. Most thoughtful teacher ever. Let's pin that. Let's put that on the screen. I love that. Also, I'm going to have like an actual sign, and it's going to be in a different room very soon. I could probably actually start filming in there. I just don't have the sign yet. But yes, it's coming together, guys. Okay, so the first main case that we had is West Virginia State Board of Education v. Barnett, and this was in 1943. And I remember being pissed in my school that my First Amendment rights were. Me too. You probably heard about Tinker, and you were like, fuck yeah. And then a lot of the cases after Tinker, which we're going to talk about, were like, oh, never mind. And there was a really big case we're going to talk about that was in 2021. And I was in my last semester of law school at the time, and I was taking current issues in con law by a professor that is like, he has argued before the Supreme Court many times. And we looked at the Snapchat case. So we're going to talk about that at the end. Yes, Driz is in here and Hazard's in here. So I'm excited. I like hearing what you guys think, because both of you are great thinkers, and everybody else that's new, except the people wanting to see cleavage because you're on the wrong stream. I feel like I'm like, join me on Twitch, and then people are like, I didn't want to see this, and I'm like, well, sorry. I can't read. I can read Farsi, but like very slowly, and I'm not going to try. All right. So what was this case? This case had to do with you were required to salute the flag in school. And there was a group of Jehovah's Witnesses that stated that it obviously violated their First Amendment rights because it violated their religion, and they didn't want to salute the flag. And the court ruled that they didn't have to. So a quote from Justice Robert H. Jackson. If there is any fixed star in our constitutional constellation, it is that no official, high or petty, can prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or other matters of opinion, or force citizens to confess by word or act their faith therein. If there are any circumstances which permit an exception, they do not now occur to us. So this was kind of like the first big major case where kids in school that were underage still had some First Amendment right not to salute the flag and be able to, practice their beliefs. Loved your missionary words. They are. You should stream on Rumble. I'm not canceled yet. At some point, I'll probably be canceled, and I will have to stream on Rumble. But thus far, we're not that canceled to get on Rumble. I'm still trying to figure out the normal platforms that everybody else uses. Would you call a Jehovah Witness extremists similar to Muslim extremists? Depends in what sense. I think that Muslim extremism is more, if we're looking at it from a consequentialist point of view of like detriment to society, I think Islamic extremism does have more of that, and you could link it back to the practice in the text, but that's a conversation for another day. Also, you should invite a chat bot. I don't know what that means. You're beautiful. Thank you. All right, guys. We're here to learn the law. Okay. Now we have the infamous Tinker case. So if you've ever pretty much studied the First Amendment, like Drake was saying, you probably heard of this case. This was a 1969 case. And this was about students who decided to wear a armband to protest the Vietnam War. And the school told them they had to take it off. They had this whole powwow. It went up to the Supreme Court. And what did the Supreme Court say? This is where that famous line came from. But they said First Amendment rights applied in light of the special characteristics at the school environment are available to teachers and students. It can hardly be argued that either students or teachers shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. So this was like the big thing, right? Students, it can hardly be argued that either students or teachers shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. Supreme Court said, hey, look, you have this right, and just because you're walking through the school, it doesn't go away there. But they did say that speech could be restricted if there is a forecast, if it forecasts substantial disruption of or material interference with school activities. So they were like, and that's the thing about courts, guys, is they always like, when you're reading a case, you're like, this makes sense. But then you're like, I don't even know how to, like, it doesn't give you clear guidelines on how to apply this. Like substantial disruption of or material interference with school activity. So I guess in this case, from what I remember from even reading it, they're like, this didn't really interfere with, the school. They're just wearing this armband. Yeah, some people agree, some people disagree, but it wasn't causing this major disruption. But in cases where it does cause a major disruption, you can restrict it. This is not the case in college. This is just for K through 12. You add on your social links and the bot will post it in the chat. Okay, I don't know how to do that. My moderator might know. Dang, maybe I'm too young to learn the law. I don't care. I'm 13, but later 14. Oh, no. Okay, you are young. You know what? This stream is actually appropriate for you for once. All right. Then we had, so we're like, all right, Supreme Court seems to be wanting to give high school students their rights. But then Supreme Court did a switcheroo on us for a few cases in a row. So then there is Bethel School District v. Fraser. And this was about, I think this was a high school kid. I'm assuming, I'm hoping. So he gave a speech at a school assembly. I think there was he was introducing his friend who was running for student government. And he gave a speech that was full of sexual innuendos. And it was very vulgar for the school. So Here's some quotes from it. I know a man who is firm. He's firm in his pants. He's firm in his shirt. His character is firm. But most of all, his belief in you, the students of Bethel, is firm. And then has, I think his name, Jeff Coleman, is a man who takes his point and pounds it in. If necessary, he'll take an issue and nail it to the wall. He doesn't attack things in spurts. He drives hard, pushing and pushing until finally he succeeds. So as you can tell, this was just some kind of, this was just a kid being a kid, and people in the audience were laughing, a little schoolboy shit. Jeff is a man who will go to the very end, even the climax, for each and every one of you. So vote for Jeff for ASB vice president. He'll never come in between you and the best our high school can be. So those are some quotes from his speech. If you work, okay. What field of law are you studying? Yeah, I'm a licensed attorney. If you work for the USPS, how do you know when you can take legal advantage of a supervisor for asking for medical information that I know is not legal? Okay, yeah, this is not the place for your personal legal inquiries. I feel like that is based on the school you go to. I went to a pretty good high school that almost rewarded students who are able to speak their mind respectfully. So what your high school allows is one thing, but your high school has to behave within the bounds of the First Amendment. So the whole point of these cases is what are schools not allowed to do? So for instance, the school in Tinker who said you can't wear armbands protesting the Vietnam War, the school wasn't able to do that. Now, if your school was letting you do that in the first place, then it wouldn't have been a Supreme Court case. So there are things that the school can't infringe on, your rights, right? There are parts of speech that your school can't prohibit. And that's kind of what we're looking at. We're looking at the outer bounds, right? But then your school could even your school could prohibit certain speech and choose not to. And you just go to in my opinion, a better school. Yeah, Jazz. Hello. All right. So what did the Supreme Court say here? So they ruled in favor of the school. So they said that undoubted freedom to advocate unpopular and controversial issues in school and classrooms must be balanced against society's countervailing interest in teaching the boundaries of socially appropriate behavior. So the Supreme Court said this is disruptive. The school has an interest in not having lewd, vulgar speech, especially at a school-sponsored event, because this was a school-sponsored assembly. So the school in this case, which I think the student got suspended, was able to punish the student for his speech. You just brought up something interesting about the Vietnam War, Jazz. Did I? I think it's just the facts of Tinker. Here are some quotes from the case. Public education must prepare pupils for citizenship in the Republic. It must inculcate habits and manners of civility as values in themselves, conducive to happiness, and is indispensable to the practice of self-government in the community and the nation. Punishment justified in response to offensively lewd and indecent speech in school environment. So basically they're saying that the school can prohibit offensive, lewd, and indecent speech. So obviously us as citizens in the free world, you're allowed to go out on the street and say anything as lewd and indecent and offensive as you want, but you do not have that right when you are a student in school. I went to high school during the beginning of the Iraq War, and they were strict on us wearing anti-war Bush clothes that contained vulgar speech. So I think it's the vulgar speech part that they were able to even do that, because they couldn't. I would venture to say that they couldn't just have you not wear clothes that showed that you were against the war, but maybe the vulgar part. I don't think my high school let us wear like a shirt that said like "fuck you," Damn, just get my question. This is not the place for your question. All right. Then we had Hazelwood. So Hazelwood was a major case, and it was in 1988. And this had to do with the school newspaper. And the school newspaper, there were 2 articles in the school newspaper on pregnancy and I think divorce. I'm not sure. That when the administration looked over it, they thought it was inappropriate. They didn't have time to make the edits, so they ran the paper without those 2 columns or articles in it, and the students were really mad. So it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. Is this topic based on the promotion of LGBTQ plus education being considered lewd and vulgar? No, but I can get to a little bit of information on book banning at the end because we're seeing a big book banning fucking craze with the conservative wing of our country, and especially through the actions perpetuated by like Ron DeSantis in Florida. We're seeing a lot of that. So if you guys want, we can go really, like, I have like at the end a little quick, there's like one case that is about the school board having the right to do that. So we can talk about that, but we could try to link it and you guys can let me know what you think when it comes to that. But this topic in particular isn't based on the promotion of LGBTQ plus education being considered vulgar. I don't think you could say that like as a blanket statement. I don't know how you would defend that. That's kind of like if you work for certain companies, you can't say anything you want publicly. This is true, but the difference is that you're required to go to school when you're under 18. For the most part, you're not required to work at a certain company. So when you're somewhere you're required to be, the default position is that, okay, if this is something you have to do, you should still retain your rights because you didn't choose to do it. But we're dealing with minors, which is why actually college, even though you do choose to be in college, is supposed to be like, you know, they really consider college to be like the breeding grounds of free speech and being able to engage in ideas, even if they're difficult or offensive. The courts really don't like any type of content-based discrimination, viewpoint-based discrimination, and I don't think they even like that in educate K through 12 education, but they could, you know, the Supreme Court could have just not given kids in school any free speech rights. You're minors. There's a lot of rights you guys don't have. So you guys don't have First Amendment rights either. But school is still a place, especially when you're 16, 17, 18, where you want people to be able to engage in the free exchange of ideas. So seeing how the court deals with that, we're going to talk about off-campus speech too, because think about it. If you're in school, which we're all required to be when we're like, until we hit 18 or usually until we graduate high school, I think you can drop, I don't know what age you can technically drop out. But the whole point is, should schools be able to punish you for off-campus speech? Should they be able to punish you and impact perhaps your future for even certain kinds of speech on campus? And that's why I think this is an important constitutional issue. Anything vulgar in schools makes sense, kind of like freedom of speech that is threatening towards someone else doesn't mean anything in public. Oh, direct threats of violence. Yes, direct threats of violence obviously are not not protected. But it's a very incitement to violence is actually a very, very, if you're actually what is the name of the test? Brandenburg test, I think. It's very, very, very hard to actually meet that standard because the threat has to be imminent. So you can't just say, okay, like next week you guys should all go kill trans people. It has to be imminent. It's like a whole thing to actually be in trouble for that kind of speech. And there's a lot of categories of speech that's technically unprotected, but that isn't usually legislated, like fighting words. Like technically fighting words aren't protected. The case we have on that is Chaplinsky, which is the fighting words in Chaplinsky were "you goddamn racketeer." In 2023, if you call someone else a goddamn racketeer, I don't think you would be, you would lose a case for fighting words. Although if we were just to go based off precedent, I guess you could have. They probably would argue these are not fighting words in 2023. You could argue there are certain words that probably maybe could be put in that box, but they haven't really touched on that. Technically, we talked about this one stream, porn is considered obscenity. It's not protected speech. So a lot of people are like, oh, whether or not you think it should be, or it's freedom of expression, etc. It's not protected. It is restricted if it has no social, literary, whatever value we talked about, which mine does. My explicit content does. But everybody else's apparently doesn't. And so it's not actually protected. Obviously, libel, slander. There's a lot of different kinds of speech that isn't protected. And in K through 12 education, your speech is restricted, right? So there are different varying degrees of your like where you have the most freedoms when it comes to freedom of speech. So this is one of the arguments people make for turning like Twitter into the public sphere, because the public sphere, like the public square, is, if you look at our legal history, it is the place where you're supposed to have the most expansive rights especially when it comes to freedom of speech. So one reason people are really against or vehemently against like censorship on social media is because nobody goes to the public square anymore. Like none of us are I mean, if you are, you're way cooler than I am that like go to like your town square and like I guess outside of protests and like hear what people have to say. But obviously our founding fathers were, and the way that our legal jurisprudence has developed, it's on the basis of like, okay, we want to protect the marketplace of ideas. Number one, we want to protect democracy and being able to protect speech that helps us run our democracy, that helps voters vote and pick elected officials. That needs to be protected at all costs. Marketplace of ideas needs to be protected. And number three, our ability to express ourselves needs to be protected. So those are the three values that we're trying to protect when it comes to freedom of speech. And so the public sphere is seen as the public square, and I guess the public sphere is supposed to be seen as the vehicle in which to do that most expansively. But then, schools and all these other areas, you become a little bit more, okay, let me see. From what I understand, it's basically like a dress code or code of conduct. Yes, but the difference is that when it comes to constitutional rights, um, especially in K through 12 education, that's where it becomes, so, and we're also seeing cases of this with the Establishment Clause. So there was a major case also in 2021, October 2021, that term for Supreme Court, they made like a lot of crazy decisions. And obviously, as we know, our Supreme Court is more conservative now. So there was the coach who was praying like in the football field. I think it was after each game. And some people would join him or not join him. And similar cases to that in the past, the Supreme Court said not okay. You can't, as a faculty member of the school, be holding prayer, even if it's after school. But the Supreme Court said it was okay. I did look at the case in 2021, but I don't fucking remember it now. So that's all I'm going to say about it. But we could do an episode on how the court has also, the evolution of the court when it comes to the free exercise clause and the establishment clause in the future, if you guys are interested. But it would fly in the face of history and the ideal that the U.S. is the land of the free, which attracted colonizers in the first place. I suppose what would fly in the face? Sorry. Oh, if they just stop free speech in uni. So this is not about university. So not university. This is about K through 12 education. University, you have, I would venture to say you have like almost the same rights you have in like not like just as a citizen, except for if it was maybe highly disruptive. But as we see, like universities are kind of like the fucking like the poster child for disruptive speech, right? People, even when it comes to expressing freedom of expression, people, as we see, universities damn near burn down their schools when somebody comes and speaks that they disagree with, and that has never been an issue that the Supreme Court was like, oh, you can't do that. So in college you have a lot more rights in this realm than you do in K through 12. Hey, I thought porn was considered art. Unfortunately not. It's very funny to actually read the cases that the Supreme Court has, the case law coming out of the Supreme Court when it comes to obscenity, because they just don't know how to distill. Like one justice famously says, you know it when you've seen it, because it's really hard to describe obscenity or like to put a definition to it or to draw a line what's obscenity and what's art. So the way they did it is like, if it only appeals to what is the word? It starts with a P. Basically, like if it's just there to make you horny and it doesn't have any like artistic, literary value to it, like if it's just hard, like basically they're saying hardcore pornography is not protected. If it's just there to make you fucking nut, it's not protected. But if it has some kind of artistic or whatever meaning, or and that makes the line super vague. And it's really funny to watch a bunch of conservative old men try to describe hardcore pornography without calling it hardcore pornography. They're like, if it appeals to the man's most like primitive like it was fucking hilarious. I think I talked about it on the stream about it, which you guys, if you could put up where you can watch previous streams, please. There we go. I never really promote that channel because I have the other YouTube channel, which is just my my main channel. But if you guys ever want to watch these, then go for it. And I did do one on that. So yeah, literary has no serious literary, artistic, political value is what they're saying. So they're saying this is not what our forefathers and this is not what our sons went and died for in war so that you could show your titties. I'm like, it's exactly what they died for. Okay. All right. It applies to well-being and safety of the students in a public education setting. Senseless vulgarity would infringe on the ability of others to get educated, I would think. Yeah, I'm not against them. I'm not against them being able to restrict like just crazy vulgarity in schools. But as we'll see sometimes, like the school paper one, I mean, the school newspaper one, I don't like this. I feel like if people want to, if students want to, which I'll talk about what the court said in a minute, and as we'll see with future cases, some of them I don't agree with. Twitch stream is so much better. You don't freeze here, and I can hear everything you are on it. Oh, thank you, and I'm glad you guys are enjoying this topic and you don't think it's boring. What are your thoughts on the Jordan Neely case? Seems like the defense will hinge on what I haven't looked. I don't like to speak on. I haven't looked into the Andrew Tate stuff. I haven't looked into Jordan Neely. And I don't want to speak on things unless I am very educated on all the evidence as much as I can be. Like, I understand, what if you are of a different religion or an atheist? Team atheist here. It's all artsy fartsy, like the old school Playboy centerfolds. They might be okay with it being art. So it's interesting. Back when a lot of these cases were decided, that probably would be considered hardcore. Now it wouldn't. And also, one thing they do say is that it depends on the standards of the community. So what may be considered obscene in one part of the country may not be in another, or in one setting may not be in another, which makes the internet very interesting because the internet wasn't around when these cases were decided. So when people are like, if Twitter has the same rules as, if Twitter is basically considered the public square, technically porn and it would be under the obscenity doctrine and it wouldn't be allowed. However, you could argue that it is not obscene for the community in the fact that it's the internet. So it kind of, we don't know how to really interpret that, right? Because the standards for the community that you're in on the internet is kind of like we're all in the same place. So interesting stuff. Yeah, that whole coach holding prayer on the field reminded me of the whole see you at the pole prayer events that evangelicals would push. I didn't see that. All I had was Jesus Pizza, which they usually got way better pizza than our school did. So I was a really bad kid, and I would go, and like me and my friends would literally take like pizza slices and then leave. We did sometimes listen to some people's testimonies. We were not swayed. I believe the language was without social or artistic or literary value. Yeah, now I want the language. I want the fucking language. Let's see, obscenity. Obscenity doctrine. Also, like I said, this does not apply to me because my porn is full of artistic and literary value. Yes, taken as a whole, lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. My boobs are really big. I feel like that's a scientific inquiry because they're very large. Supreme Court, it must appeal to an average person's, I can never say this word, prurient interest, but it has the R in it. So I always am like, how do I say this? But I think it's just prurient interest, which is basically like if it makes you just fucking horny and it doesn't do anything beyond that, it's not protected. Depict or describe sexual conduct in a patently offensive way. This is all just old white men talk for it's hardcore porn. You just quoted it. Okay. It goes to that old debate, why are Americans so much comfortable with violence versus nudity or porn? Yeah. Midnight Cowboy, the Best Picture Oscar winner in 1969, was rated X. Now it would be on TCM. Yeah. If you look at the old like ratings and what was needed to consider it like to go, like it used to be like if you even showed like somebody's like whole chat, like not even like their boobs, it would automatically push them to like the next level rating. And now obviously that's all shifted. And the obscenity doctrine, at least to my knowledge, has not been revisited for a very, very long time. And a lot of the cases were about like billboards and like pamphlets and movie theater, like drive-in movie theater. If you could have a scene, if people could see it, there's that one case where someone could be driving in the highway or driving down the road and they could see like in this drive-in movie theater this sex scene, even if it was in a movie. Like those were the kind of times that we were talking about. So times have certainly changed. Jesus Pizza sounds like a cool punk band. No, it was like the Christians. I don't know what exactly organization was sponsoring it, but obviously it had a lot of student involvement from the Christian students, and it was every Friday, and it was Jesus Pizza, and you could go. We had the shittiest fucking school food. Oh God. And they would bring like, I forgot where they would get their pizza, but you could go and then the idea was you eat pizza and you listen to them talk about Jesus, which I don't have an issue with. I also I seem to have this thing where I like to steal pizza from organizations and student clubs where I vehemently disagree with their views and like I stole pizza all the time from Jesus Pizza. And then in college, I was good. Like my bachelor's degree, I was good. In law school, the Federalist Society would always have the best food. And I would go and I would steal food from the Federalist Society. Terrible. What makes one man horny doesn't for another. I mean, people get horny from all kinds of shit. So yeah. It's going to be very hard to draw like a distinct line when it comes to obscenity. And as I said, things have changed so much with the internet. The standards of the community are now no longer this city or this neighborhood or whatever. It's kind of all of us on the internet. What is the topic du jour? Freedom of speech in K through 12 education. We don't support pizza theft. Oh yeah, I've seen that kind of behavior. Tell swing is weird to see public schools used for church services on the weekend, but I live in Texas, so a lot is weird. So saying 2021 was a crazy year for the Supreme Court. They also had those cases, which I'm not too familiar with. This was like when COVID hit our school and I didn't have to really attend class anymore. I would just turn it on and vibe. But there was the case about, government funding of a private Christian school, and the Supreme Court ruled that they had to do it because they were providing funding to secular schools. So it changed. Again, I'm not too familiar with it, but if you guys are interested in that, I could look back into it. How would you have the rules for schools? What would you allow? So we'll get to that at the end because I want to go through some of the other decisions that they made. So in this case, Hazelwood, the articles that this administration thought was inappropriate was omitted from the newspaper because they didn't have time to edit it and whatever, went up to the Supreme Court. and they ruled in favor of the school. So determined that school administrators could exercise private restraint of school-sponsored expressions such as curriculum-based student newspapers and assembly speeches if the censorship is reasonably related to the legitimate pedagogical concerns. So basically school-related. Anything that they think disrupts the school curriculum, which... Okay. School-sponsored school newspapers will not be presumed to be operating as public forums for student expression absent evidence indicating otherwise. Yeah. So they're basically saying that the school's now able to kind of restrict speech. So, tinker, your rights don't disappear at the schoolhouse gate. And then they're like, well, if you're exceptionally lewd or offensive, yeah, okay. If it's a school paper and the school has a certain like message or curriculum that they're trying to teach, and the student's articles or what the student was trying to convey doesn't align with that message because it's a school-sponsored newspaper, then they're allowed to prohibit it. It's just fascinating to me how much religious conservatives maintain this idea of separation of church and state, but always trying to blur the lines on local, state, federal levels any opportunity they can. Yes. Great topic. Glad we have Freedom from Religion Foundation, ACLU, and the Satanic Temple to fight for secularism. Yes. Very important organizations. Man, I'm a semi-expert on the subject. I'm a former substitute teacher. Oh, interesting. Yes, we are talking about free speech in K through 12 education. So basically, the majority said that school administrators are not required to tolerate speech that is contrary to the school's academic mission. So, but this was actually a very unpopular opinion, and there was actually a lot of legislation even passed, or school boards, and a lot was done to try to, okay, yeah, technically the schools can do this, but we want to ensure the schools don't do this. So there were the New Voices legislation, ensures the school-sponsored media remain free from administrative control or prior review. So this was in response to Hazelwood, and it passed in California, Nevada, Oregon, Colorado, Kansas, North Dakota, a bunch of states. And it was a project of the Student Press Law Center. All right. Now we have the infamous Morse v. Frederick. Most of you have probably heard of this. This is the infamous bong hits for Jesus. So, yep. So this was a student who was holding up a sign, I believe, that said bong hits for Jesus. School was like, no, can't do that. Went up to the Supreme Court. And so we're already seeing we have some exclusions now from what's like, okay, you still have First Amendment rights. Can't be offensive. You can't be lewd. You can't, the school has a right to control anything that runs contrary to the school's mission, academic mission. And now we have, you are fully able to prohibit and restrict speech that is promoting illegal activity. So let me see what my moderator said. I was hoping you'd bring this up. Yep. Jesus Pizza, bong hits for Jesus. Jesus is pretty cool at school. Yes. So the Supreme Court said it was reasonable for the school to conclude that the banner promoted illegal drug use in violation of established school policy, and that failing to act would send a powerful message to the students in her charge, including Frederick, which was a student, about how serious the school was about the dangers of illegal drug use. The black letter law here: schools may take steps to safeguard those entrusted to their care from speech that can reasonably be regarded as encouraging illegal drug use. So what do we think about that? You think it should when it comes to legal activities? I mean, yeah. I guess. I know to us, we're like bong hits for Jesus is like pretty mild, but I think it's reasonable for schools to be. We have to remember, these are kids. College, completely different. But I would just say, all right, for instance, if there is a pro or like where would the line be drawn, right? If you're a student organization that is fighting for the rights of sex workers and advocating for decriminalizing prostitution or even decriminalizing drugs, like could the school say, ooh, your prostitution's legal in your, I mean, I guess you could say we're arguing for it not to be illegal. We're not arguing or promoting the activity in general. But I mean, and I haven't seen it really become an issue in that regard. So I'm not too upset about this. I feel like the bong hits for Jesus could be considered parody / humor and not a specific call to action for illegal activities. I agree. But clearly the court said so reasonable that the school assumed this could be. That's where I agree with you, is it could just be comedy, parody, etc. If anything, maybe they could have argued this was super disruptive because, you know, kids, like if I was like at 14 and someone wrote bong hits for Jesus, I'd be like, like, you know, it would like be disruptive. Look, the public school represents the state and teachers and staff are looking out for funding. And if this kid's message gets out, then the school looks like trash in the public eye. And I think schools want to retain a certain degree of control and authority over students, which I think makes sense if the students are underage. So it's either their parents have that authority or control, and then the school needs to be able to have a little bit of it if they're going to be, you know, around your kids and trying to teach them for 8 hours a day. Because, oh God, wasn't school so long? My high school started at 7:30. I had to be in class at 7:30. I used to wake up at like 5 because I had to look cute. I had to like do my little, like, I used to wear like sparkly eyeshadow and like I would sleep in, I had a computer graphics class where the teacher just let me sleep. Well, everyone sleep, not just me. And that was my nap time. Like, wouldn't a reasonable person understand that this shirt is not quoting Jesus? They're actually taking hits at the time. The reasonable person standard. I want to take a bong hit for Jesus while eating Jesus pizza because I got the Jesus munchies. We should have a Jesus themed Twitch stream. 7:15. Whew. I feel like and studies have confirmed that that's not good for optimal information retention for people who are still growing and developing human beings. God. Yeah. Oh. And when I had to take the school bus before like my junior year, my stop was the first stop on like all the stops. So I'm pretty sure my bus used to come at like 6:30. And I would be like, and I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, so it was rainy and it was gray, and like you'd wake up and it's pitch black, and you would just, I mean, I would just get in my little outfit, have my little sparkly eyeshadow, and be at the bus stop like it was so it was torture. And then I remember I had like gym first thing in the morning. I'd require gym. I was like, excuse me, like, no, I didn't just put on sparkly eyeshadow so I could ruin it at the gym. So I got out of it. I got to opt out. I had my friend that the school counselor didn't like me, but she liked him. And he went and he actually, he said my boobs were too big because they were really big at the time and it was causing me back issues. So I wasn't able to do regular PE. So I got to do online aerobics. It was interesting in high school. My sister is coming to visit next weekend, and we're gonna film. I might have her come on my Monday Twitch stream. My sister is a an attorney. She actually does business, but she also does cannabis. She's cannabis law. And Oregon, and she is much more proper and lawyery than I am. I'm clearly the trouble child. So we'll see if I can get her on. 7:30 talk about privileged schools, or 6:30 from, oh God. Rainy gray sounds wonderful. Yeah, it was wonderful. Oh, and if I had a game the night before that would go until midnight, I would be dead at first period. I was always dead at, like, the only way not to be dead is if you slept at like 9, which I don't know. In middle school right now, at school's 3:45 ends like that trash. Yeah, and like even though school would end at like 2:30, 2:45, I felt like the whole day was done. Like, I never came home at 2:45 and was like, oh, it's only 2:45. Like, now 2:45 is like the middle of the day. Most recent research suggests adolescents need about 10 hours of sleep at night. There's a movement to move high school start times to later times in the morning in some school districts. Yes. And I'm 28. I graduated high school a decade ago. And like, I don't remember if this was 10 hours, but it was like, high school students need a lot more sleep than even like a regular adult would need. And it's going to impact their ability to retain information and learn, which is school mission, apparently, that no one's supposed to disrupt. So I was homeschooled, so everyone thought I got to sleep in, but my parents made me wake up early and take care of our dog, cat, and chickens. All right, I want everyone to release in the chat right now your trauma from high school start times and what you had to do. Oh God, I used to, and I didn't have a bedtime. My parents were pretty lax with that. So sometimes on my pink Motorola Razor, I would be texting smiley faces to some boy, or probably, and then he would text me smiley face. I would text him smiley face, and then it's like 2 a.m. and we're like, and then my alarm would go off 3 hours later, and I was supposed to somehow retain information about history. No, thank you. And I had physics 3 at 9 a.m. in the middle of Midwest winter during college. Ooh, physics ever is a no for me. I think physicists are fucking geniuses, but I am just not smart enough for physics. Physics, I could do all the other sciences, and I can do math. When it's numbers, for some reason, as soon as numbers get replaced with like acceleration, velocity, I'm like, I lose it. All right, my moderator is a chemist, and he says, as a chemist, fuck physics. I could do bio. I only took one physics class in high school, which because I was required, and I never took a physics class again. And then in college, I majored in psych, so you had to do a couple hard science classes, and I picked like ones about like the brain development, whatever. And then like stats was like the only. I went up to calculus in high school, which was so like I didn't even need to. I should have done the bare minimum. We had to share school once with another. First period was at 5 a.m. Ooh, so we won't see your sister at your Monday night after Twitch. Oh no, she would never do that. She would never do it. She's like the most like conservative. Not her views. So like when I told her I wanted to do OnlyFans, she's like, cool. Like she's very like sex positive. Like she's as liberal as I am, but she personally is very like she doesn't even like I remember I would go to school and I would have these like little I'd pretty much go to school in like these corset little tops, and she would go to school in like a t-shirt. And I was like, hey. And everyone would talk about me to her. Like, your sister's so hot. The busty girls at my school didn't get out of gym. They had to endure it and got leered at by everyone, including the gym teachers. Yeah, so our high school, you had to do one required PE class, which was like team. And that was the thing. It was like team sports. Like, I don't want to play hockey, bro, at 8 a.m. I don't want to play hockey. Like, ever. I don't want to play flag football. Like, and then the other one you get to pick. So I did like the yoga Pilates one. And that was fine. But I'm not running and tackling people with a hockey stick. I didn't get ready for this. Teenagers are growing into their adult bodies, so they require a lot of sleep and food, kind of like babies. I know I did. School story. Every Wednesday, half of my day was wasted going to chapel and worshiping Jesus for 2 to 3 hours. My education was fucked. Ooh. So I was really fascinated by this at the time. We had a high school, and we didn't have a huge Mormon student population, but there was some Mormon church or worship center or something like right across the school. And they got to have a period off or something where they got to go do that. And I was even mad then. I was like, wait a second. How come they get to, and I don't get to go to like secular club or something for that hour? I've done physics in sophomore year of high school, 6 years of physics. You're smarter than me. Calc 4 becomes a shit show. Okay, no, I think like pre-calc, and then I like had one semester of calc 1, and I remember I looked at the graduation requirements. I was like, you don't actually even need to get to pre-calc. So why did I even do it? I dislike chem most of the 3, but sadly math is in all of them. The higher you go, yeah. You grew up in the Pacific Northwest. Vancouver is kind of the Pacific Northwest, beautiful part of the country. I have Vancouver, Washington, or Vancouver, BC. Does your sister have a similar build as you, Jazz? Kind of, not really. She's short like me. Is high school very hard or not? I'm like always asking that. It's not very hard. It's fun. Like when I think about like going to high school, and it was literally just, okay, does anyone else relate to this? You had a bathroom pass. It was a laminated pass that now, like, the thought of it makes me want to go shower and like disinfect my whole body, because everybody would be using the same pass, and by the end of the term it'd be like all wrinkly and gross. And I used to literally go to class, text my friends, can I go to the bathroom? And I'd just take this pass and go hang out with my friends in the hallway. Yeah. So never thought about that till now. Yeah, the bathroom pass. First of all, the thought now of asking someone to go to the bathroom. Oh, I miss some things about being a kid, but I don't miss the lack of freedom that I had. My moderator says we had ones that were old wooden rods, really absorbs the stink. Ew. High school was just what I did between sleep and baseball. And then you get a worksheet, and they're like, okay, work on this worksheet the rest of the class. And then you would just fuck around with your friends. British Columbia. Yeah, so I have a lot of family from there. So I've actually been there quite a bit. It is very similar. I miss the lack of responsibility. Yeah, I miss like going to class and like it not like meaning really anything. Like, okay, I'm here looking at the time until lunch. Oh, that sucked though. Do you guys remember just those days where like every 5 minutes felt like an eternity? I mean, this was the case even in law school. All right, guys, back to bong hits for Jesus. So, yep, schools may take steps to safeguard those entrusted to their care from speech that can reasonably be regarded as encouraging illegal drug use. So, no bong hits for Jesus. So now we have some more recent cases. I didn't have the privilege of a bathroom pass. 1 kid at a time was the rule. If you didn't come back at a reasonable time, teachers would go into the bathrooms and find you. That did happen to me a few times. And I was like, oops. So I got detention once, and it was funny because detention in our school was like this one, like this is like the lunch. So if you had lunch detention, here's like the cafeteria, and here's like more chairs. And this one like corner by the office is where detention people had to sit. So if I had detention, my friends didn't have detention, they would move a table and have the middle dividing line of the table be half in detention, half not in detention. And maybe that's when I knew I should be a lawyer, because teacher's like, what is this? I was like, I'm technically in detention and they're technically not in detention. I got away with it. I just love those days at work. Okay. So this was not a Supreme Court case. This was where was this? Second Circuit, and I think it was Court of Appeals. Yeah. Court of Appeals at a second. 2008. So this case, a member of the student council had been prohibited from running for school council again because of a blog post she had written criticizing school officials for allegedly canceling Jam Fest, an annual student concert. So from what I remember, you were obviously the cool table in high school. I actually wasn't. I was always very different, and people were always very surprised by the people I was friends with, because I wasn't friends with people that you would, I guess, stereotypically, like people have these like assumptions, right? And I actually really liked like the theater kids, and like, I don't know how old you guys are, but like the goth emo kids. I thought they were so cool and so funny, even though I didn't dress or look like them and I didn't do theater. I thought they were much cooler than the cool kids. They're funnier. Not right now in middle school, and they take the dress code so seriously. I was curious about that. I have been very curious about that because when I was in middle school and high school, it was before the whole push on, how dress codes are sexist, et cetera, et cetera. And the stuff that they would get away with then, they would literally, do they still do this? I mean, I don't think you're a female, but you would have to put your arm down and you would have to, if your shorts were shorter than your fingernails, they were too short. We had crazy rules. I would get in trouble all the time. And I'm like, do they still do that because of all the, I guess, wokeness that has now been promulgating in schools? Yeah, middle school here is standardized dress. At high school, my kids will go to the band kids or the cool kids. It's a cool high school. I agree. Yeah, the cool kids are like cross country, like, okay, like you run in people's backyards. Like, why does that make you cool? I had a dress code. Conformity was the norm. Yeah, we had a dress code too, but college, I was free. Crop tops all day. All right, anyway, so from what I remember about the facts of this case, the student, I don't know if the faculty was actually going to cancel the event or what, but she posted about it and had a bunch of students then were calling the school and complaining. And basically, she was using her role on student council to push forward her agenda of making this event run the way she wanted and making sure the school didn't cancel it. So the court did not rule in her favor. Said despite the fact that the blog entry was written and published off campus, the Second Circuit found that the students' punishment was Second Circuit found that the students' punishment was properly analyzed under Tinker because it was reasonably foreseeable that the student posting would reach school property. I don't like this. Okay, I do not like this. So yeah, characterizing the volume of calls and emails received by two school officials in response to the student's blog post as sufficient evidence of a foreseeable risk of substantial disruption to satisfy Tinker. The Second Circuit found that the student's punishment did not violate the First Amendment. So student was essentially punished for successful advocacy, in my opinion. Sorry for the delay. Yay! Hi, King of the Hun. I was just talking about you. I'm not kidding. You can look at it on the replay. Now we are discussing the actual court case involving the First Amendment in schools. Yes, we're looking at how the Supreme Court has ruled on different cases pertaining to First Amendment rights and freedom of speech in schools. So this is a Second Circuit case from 2008 where a student posted on her blog about her dismay with the school canceling a event, Jam Fest. I don't know what that was, maybe some type of school dance. And so a lot of students were calling and causing a disruption, and she was banned or barred from running for student council the next year or something. I'm not 100% sure if that was her punishment. I don't remember. But either way, it was fine. Bottom line is schools are allowed to prohibit, or they're allowed to punish a student for off-campus speech if there is a foreseeable risk of substantial disruption. So there's that. What do we think? What do we think about that? So other circuits followed suit. The Eighth Circuit in 2012, Tinker, I'm just going to give you, I don't know the facts of these cases. It's SJW v. Lee Summit. And if there are lawyers in here, I could give you the little thing to find it if you're ever interested, but whatever. Tinker applies to off-campus student speech where it's reasonably foreseeable that the speech will reach the school community and cause a substantial disruption to the educational setting. That's what the Eighth Circuit said in 2012. In Kowalski v. Berkeley City School in 2011, the Fourth Circuit said the Fourth Circuit analyzed off-campus speech under Tinker when the nexus of the student speech to the school's pedagogical interests is sufficiently strong to justify the action taken by school officials. And in the Ninth Circuit in 2016, in CR versus Eugene School District, Ninth Circuit has declined to choose between the two, instead applying both the nexus and reasonable foreseeability tests. So regardless of phrasing, the practical impact of each of these rules was the same. When students speak online or off campus, they do so at their own risk. The ruling sounds vague. That is a lot more murky in my opinion. Yeah, the ruling sounds vague enough to protect the schools, but too vague enough to become a dictatorship. So Tinker was like, okay, if it's disruptive, you can prohibit it. And then we've seen it's gotten strict, like it's gotten more restricted. You can't promote illegal activity. It can't be counter to the school's mission, academic vision, prevailing academic mission. It can't be extremely offensive or lewd. Now we're getting to off-campus speech, and they're basically using Tinker, and they're using this reasonable foreseeability test. So it's not so much I wore something and I went to school and it was disruptive and they asked me to take it off. I did something off campus that I knew would reach the school and cause a disruption, and it was reasonably foreseeable that it will do so. So courts love reasonable and foreseeability. Those are kind of two things that the court fucking loves. Reasonable person standard. Leaves a very broad interpretation up to the school to determine what could cause substantial disruption for off-campus speech and behavior. I guess it's similar to HR policies that are enforced because you can't do or say anything, especially while wearing your company's uniform/logo, and do some wild shit could bring it into. So yeah, I do want to say that your rules of your private company, like your job, is not, I mean, we've looked at First Amendment when it comes to government employees, and there's stuff like that. But the whole idea is if you work somewhere. Now, they can't infringe, like, for instance, something you do outside of work. And if it's, like if a company is like, you can't go to like a BLM protest, you get fired. Like, yeah. But in general, like having rules on what you can and can't say at work, etc., that is all fine. That's not infringing on your First Amendment rights because you're choosing to work there and you don't have to. When it comes to schools, though, right, it's supposed to be, not only is it something you have to do, but it's also a place where you're supposed to be learning and engaging with ideas. And just because you're not 18 yet, the courts have said that doesn't mean you don't have any rights. Now, do you have all your rights? You do not. I was just about to say words like reasonable, Emily, are so dangerous. Oh, okay, wait, I forgot that I didn't see the King of the Hunt one. I'm on the fence. Did I miss anything above that? Okay, I'm on the fence about this because it's a case-by-case basis what a school deems a disruption. Schools are meant to be institutes for learning, so however the teacher/administrator deems disruption. That is to say, like unpopular speech, it's not what the teacher/school doesn't agree with or like, but rather what causes an issue. So I don't like how in this case she's on the student council and she's advocating for something, and the school basically punished her and said you got too good at it and we were getting too much pushback and it was disruptive. Basically what happened. Reasonably foreseeable sounds like, ooh, I like you bringing in our fallacy talk. Yeah. Reasonably foreseeable just gives somewhat wide discretion to the person making that determination. It kind of falls in the bucket of yelling fire in a movie theater. It's not illegal to do it if you believe it is a fire, if you exclaim fire because you see a fire on the screen, but if you know people will react to it in a way that will cause damage or bodily harm to moviegoers, that there's a concern. Yeah, I wouldn't put that on the same category as the school is getting pushback over their decision because the student council member is kind of doing what student council members are supposed to do and advocate for the students. I am in agreement with King. It is really a case-by-case basis. As you are pointing out, one court decision can have impact on future cases. Such blanket rulings can ignore the fine details of specific cases and can give too much power to institutions. So the Supreme Court in general likes to give out these kind of blanket rules. This wasn't. These are circuit decisions that were that were influenced by the case I just talked about, because that one came first. But yeah, and then we get cases, and there was that Snapchat one I think we're about to discuss. That was another big one that did go up to the Supreme Court. But first, this is a Fifth Circuit case, 2015. And it is Bell v. Itawamba County School Board. So I don't remember learning about this one. So this was one that I just saw when I was researching this. How dare you exercise your responsibilities well enough to make a valid argument against this? Yeah, basically. They're like, we're getting too many calls from students that are, that are very grieved by our decision that you're talking about. So, the way schools are run does not feel so different from the military. They try to mold people to conform to a certain set of ideals, and stepping outside their establishment guidelines is met with punishment. Yes, establishment. I need to get good at talking. I like writing. But with the industry I'm in now. All right. So this was a case, like I said, 2015. A public high school student posts rap on YouTube criticizing school gym instructors for allegedly sexually harassing female students. And the court found that because it found that the student had intended his rap recording to reach the school community, the court determined that Tinker governed its consideration of student speech. So students' punishment did not violate First Amendment. So even though this was off campus, he made this rap, and the court said, well, he intended it for it to reach school campus, and therefore it was reasonably foreseeable that it would disrupt things. See, this is why I don't like it. So I don't have the background knowledge. I will ask this: did the actions of the student interfere with how the day to the school ran? From what I remember from reading it, not the school, but the school. It's like when it comes to the experience of students learning, I don't think so. I don't remember reading that, but the school was being bombarded with phone calls, emails, etc. It was disrupting the school's ability, I would say, to run the school, maybe you could argue. But even then, isn't that what the school student government is supposed to do? Just because obviously students agree with their student council member. This is literally a great example of kind of teaching the beginnings of how to be a good civil citizen and how to engage in a democracy. And you could make a parallel to when you're an adult and there is a policy decision by one of your elected officials that you don't agree with, and people are like, call your elected officials, call your senator, blah, 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 if you don't agree with a policy decision that they're making. This is that on a smaller scale when it comes to school, but I guess it's not allowed in school because it's disruptive. So, I mean, I'm not I see the point, but I think these cases in particular were decided in the wrong way. I'm in the same boat. I can type better than I can talk. My brain was faster. Yeah, my vocabulary in my head is much more advanced than the vocabulary that I use. So in my head, when I'm talking, I have all these words that I want to use that are more complex than the word I probably should use and are harder for me to put into a sentence actually speaking it, because they're not even words I'm used to saying. They're words I'm used to seeing and thinking. So I have a difficult time of taking a thought and then turning it into a sentence as opposed to just in my head that I can understand in a way that other people can understand. Isn't talking important in both of your jobs? I never did litigation. I actually in law school, you get cold called. The Socratic method is very popular way of learning in law school. So you didn't have a choice then, but I never raised my hand. I didn't do moot court. I didn't do litigation. I can write a killer brief. I can write a killer motion. I like that. I like arguing with my words, but on paper. So a lot of the stuff I'm trying to do now or coming on more like combative spaces or podcasts, I'm a little nervous because I mean, if you see my comment section on Instagram, like I'm like, like it's super easy for me to like write like a 3-paragraph comeback in like 20 seconds. But in person, I can't do it like that, especially if I'm getting interrupted and stuff, which I will be. I can barely keep my train of thought now when I'm the only one here and you guys are not going to interrupt me. So thank you. You actually are expressing yourself in complex ideas. The things we talk about here are not your normal sort of conversation. Struggling with finding the right way to convey your thoughts is not. Thank you. Appreciate that because I do feel like I'm not that great at it, but maybe I'm being hard on myself. Let's take, for instance, students that make racist remarks or commit racially insensitive content and get suspended or expelled from school, but they do it outside of the school itself, but on social media. Is the school justified in taking administrative action against the students without any active disruption in the class behind? So there was a case. I actually wasn't going to talk about it, but I did. Is it the next one? No. Did I not? Yeah, okay. So this was a 2022 case, and that's why I didn't want to talk about it because I never read it. So here is what I know about it. Raising your hand in law school is useless. The kids that I will say, the kids that raise their hand a lot in law school are usually not going to say anything good. I love your Insta clap bags. Thank you. Raising your hand in law school a lot is what we would call gunners. I don't know if you still call it that, but yeah. Speaking of your law background, would you be open to doing one of these sessions on the classified documents excitement? Yes, but I would have to be more educated on it. I've just seen headlines right now. I haven't dug deep into it. Okay. So yeah, no, this 2002 case, CG versus Siegfried, I don't know. So he was off campus at a thrift store with 3 friends. He took a picture of his friends wearing wigs and hats, including one hat that resembled a foreign military hat from the World War II period. He posted the picture on social media platform and Snapchat and mentioned it, me and the boys about to exterminate the Jews. So don't do that. He removed the post a few hours later. He then posted to his Snapchat story, "I'm sorry for the picture. It was meant to be a joke." The police were called. They visited the house. They determined no threat was present. The parents emailed schools. Student was suspended for 5 days, then investigated, then ultimately expelled. And let me look at it really quick because I want to make sure that I get what the court, because I wasn't going to talk about this, but I did have it. Because even though I forgot a lot of the information from the other cases, I did read those at some point in my yeah, let me see. Give me a second. So, okay, so this is the first case we've really had since, because it's 2022, since the Snapchat case. So I kind of should have mentioned the Snapchat case first and then talked about this case, but since it came up about using like racially insensitive language or slurs like this, I wanted to bring it up. Let's see. What did they say? I don't want to see the whole case. Give me a case brief. It's so new though that it's probably not going to be. Lexus does the worst case briefs, but we'll see. The court held where a student was expelled for making an offensive post. His father and First Amendment rights by disciplining him because the school district could not stand, and that the complaint alleged no reasonable forecast of. Okay, so they're saying, I guess they're saying that. I want to check this. Sorry, guys. I just want to make sure I'm giving you accurate information because I never read this. Okay. Hmm. Yeah, me and the boys about to exterminate the Jews is not a good move. Um, it just gives me the facts forever. Federal judge determined that because off-campus electronic speech regularly finds its way into schools and can disrupt the learning environment, the school can punish such speech under the Supreme Court's Vietnam-era Tinker precedent on in-school speech. The ruling came several months before. I thought it was after Mahoney. Maybe it was the first one. So I guess because Tinker requires a concrete threat of substantial disruption to the school rather than the anticipation of unpleasantness or discomfort, the district court misapplied. See, now we're talking about a brute. So I don't know where this case has gone. Sorry. Hey, Veronica. The school also violated the students' due process by failing. So I don't know. Okay, I think this article is saying what they think. I want to know what happened without reading the fucking case. All right. We're going to go with what Lexis says. So Lexis says the court held that where a student was expelled by making an offensive post, his father properly pled that the defendant violated his son's First Amendment rights for disciplining him for a post because the school's district and the complaint alleged no reasonable forecast of substantial disruption or actual disruption. It reversed the district court's dismissal of the plaintiff's procedural due process claim because it was certainly plausible that the child was not given meaningful opportunity to explain his side of the story. Okay. I want more. Maybe I'll have to read it now. I'm in favor of allowing minors to express themselves outside of school. Social media, however, is still kind of new frontier. Schools, admins, and politicians don't really know how to handle. In my state, California, they're doing some online etiquette classes in schools, but technology moves so fast and education is just as complex as a congressional hearing, and it's usually extremely slow to be progressive. So it seems like what's happening here is they're trying to strike a balance between if what you say off campus is going to cause a disruption when you're in school. Which, because like he said, social media is so new, it makes it very difficult though, because I don't think students always know, like this whole foreseeable thing. Like, first of all, you're a kid, you're an idiot. You don't really know how things are gonna be taken. Like, someone may post something and let's say somebody posts a rumor online about a student and it's a big rumor and it disrupts the school. So and so cheated with so and so. Like, how far can we really take this? In regards to the original matter we were discussing, unless the students were staging a walkout, the school was completely wrong. In the Bell case, the rap one. All right, well, let's go to the Mahanoy. I don't know how to say it, but this is like the big case. I call it the BL case because that was the other party. This was so the Third Circuit decided it in 2020, and then the Supreme Court decided in 2021. Let me see what my moderator says, most adults don't think about what they say / how it affects people. How can we expect kids without fully developed brains to do so? Yeah. So this case is actually going to give us some a little bit more of a guideline, but it's not all that clear. So in this case, there was a girl who didn't make it on the cheerleading team, and she took a picture and put it on her Snapchat, flipping off the camera and saying some negative things about, like, I think it was like, fuck cheerleading, fuck the school, fuck everything. Pretty mild. But they suspended her from the cheerleading team for the rest of the year. Now, why it's important that it's the cheerleading team is for some reason, I don't remember if it was the what circuit was this again? Third Circuit, or if it was because I read both of them, was really like, well, it's a privilege to be on the cheerleading team. It might have been different. So the punishment does seem to matter in the sense of like, okay, let's say, could a school punish a student for this by saying you're not allowed to go to English class? So you're suspended from going to English class the rest of the year, versus you're suspended from the cheerleading squad. There is a line here where there is the right to free speech. However, that does not mean you are free from consequences for that speech. With the school, there is a reasonable expectation that they pay attention to the potential threats to the students and staff. A threat like that, even in jest, has to be taken seriously in a country plagued by gun violence. Okay, yeah, I can see that. But the whole point is punishing speech that is part of your First Amendment right is not allowed. It's unconstitutional. Now, your First Amendment right in school is less expansive than your First Amendment right outside of school. So that's what all these cases are about. I agree, everyone, minors included, shouldn't have their First Amendment right infringed, but the danger of social media is ever present, because in the same way that it can be used to help uplift, inform, dangerous sentiments can be shared. Yes. Ooh, I remember this one. The Snapchat case. Yeah, this was a really big case, because we actually got a little more insight into what our standard is. So the Third Circuit said that Tinker does not apply to off-campus speech. That is speech that is outside school-owned, operated, or supervised channels that is not reasonably interpreted as bearing the school's influence. When a school like BL speaks away from campus over the weekend and without school resources and on a social media platform unaffiliated with the school, Tinker does not apply. So they're saying doesn't matter if it disrupted. Third Circuit said even if it disrupts the school, if it's off campus, it's different than if it's on campus. So a big thing that they talked about, which the Supreme Court didn't, so it's different. They said to enjoy free speech rights to which they are entitled, students must be able to determine when they are subject to the school's authority and when not. So this was a key thing for them, is they were like, kids need to be able to know when they have to follow these rules and when they don't. And with social media and controlling off-campus speech, it blurs that line. Are you always under the school's authority? Are you never allowed to say anything that you're not allowed to pretty much say in school? It makes it very hard for students to understand their rights. That's what the Third Circuit said. The Third Circuit reserved the question of the First Amendment implications of off-campus student speech what threatens, violence, or harasses others. So they said, we're not talking about that, but even if it disrupted things in school, if it's off campus, it's not going to be held to the Tinker standard, because students otherwise are forever under the authority of the school. Like if she said the same thing she said in the snap on a public street away from school, they would have never known. That's true, but also if she said it in the school cafeteria, she got up, she's like, fuck cheerleading, then that would be a disruption. Third Circuit is saying she said it off campus, she said it on Snapchat. Snapchat has no affiliation with the school. That Tinker didn't apply to off-campus speech. However, the Supreme Court also said, what was I'm trying to see because I have two things. Yeah, okay, so the Supreme Court said, I'm going to say what they said first. Unlike the Third Circuit, we do not believe that special characteristics that give the schools additional license to regulate speech always disappear when a school regulates speech that takes place off campus. So they're saying we're not going to do this rigid off campus, on campus. We're going to draw this line that the Third Circuit drew. And just a reminder to everyone, with the Supreme Court says something like this, it overrules. So the Supreme Court, whatever they say, all the other like lower courts need to follow. So when the Supreme Court says that we do not believe the special characteristics that give schools an additional license to regulate student speech based on whether it's on campus or off campus, this is now the rule. It doesn't matter what they said before. A lower court said before. Court identifies 3 features of off-campus speech that diminish the strength of the unique educational circumstances that might call for special First Amendment leeway. So they do said that although public schools may regulate student speech and conduct on campus, the court's precedents make clear that students do not shed their constitutional right to freedom of speech or expression when they enter campus. So this tinker idea of you don't shed your rights when you walk through a school door, the schoolhouse gate, that is still something that is held up by our courts. But, obviously there's some caveats to that. The court has also recognized that the school may regulate student speech in 3 circumstances: indecent, lewd, or vulgar speech on school grounds, the speech promoting illicit drug use during a class trip, more sweet hefty beef Frederick, bong hits for Jesus, speech that others may reasonably perceive as being against the school mission, such as that appearing in a school-sponsored newspaper. That was Hazelwood. And moreover, in Tinker, the court held that the school may also regulate speech that materially disrupts classwork or involves substantial disorder or invasion of the rights of others. So that's Tinker. So that was kind of the stuff we've talked about up until now. The school's interest in regulating these types of speech do not disappear when the speaker is off campus. So they're saying they're not going to make that distinction. 3 features of off-campus speech diminish the need for First Amendment leeway. Number 1, off-campus speech normally falls within the zone of parental responsibility rather than school responsibility. Number 2, off-campus speech regulations coupled with on-campus speech regulations would mean a student cannot engage in the regulated type of speech at all. So that's something that they did talk about. They're like, if you can't say this off campus or on campus, then you can pretty much never say it unless you're saying it not on social media, or like he said, you're not able to really express it ever. The school itself has an interest in protecting a student's unpopular off-campus expression because the free marketplace of ideas is a cornerstone of our representative democracy. In this case, BL spoke in circumstances where her parents, not the school, had responsibility, and her speech did not cause a substantial disruption or threaten harm to the rights of others. Thus, her off-campus speech was protected by the First Amendment, and the school decision to suspend her violated her First Amendment rights. So basically what they said, and time is running out, is we're not going to make this distinction between off-campus and on-campus. Instead, we're going to talk about how all the reasons that you would be able to punish speech for off-campus is the same, except for the fact that these are the 3 considerations. Are the parents in control, or is the school in control? So that has to do probably with the medium, like Snapchat. Is it making it so that the student can pretty much, like, right, if you're going to regulate off-campus speech and on-campus speech in the same way, and the student can't say it off or on campus, when can they say it? And then 3, that we do have to respect the marketplace of ideas, which does occur in high school too. So they are treating off-campus speech differently, but not for the reasons the Third Circuit was. So these are very isolated incidents, and I'm curious how common it is in public schools in general for students to be experiencing school governance like this. It would be interesting to see how a majority of these instances are handled in various local areas. I agree with you. I'm glad I'm not the one having to make these kinds of judgments. Yeah. Well, like the exterminate the Jews comment is what you said, putting others in imminent fear for their lives. You're creating a danger to the school student. Yeah, I agree. And that's why the police were called, and they went to his house, and he was like, oh, it's just a joke. He deleted it really quickly after. Look, kids are dumb, but something like that, I do think a hard stance on is permitted. Okay, it is 8. Sorry. But I'm going to be a few minutes late to my other stream, and you guys can let me know any final thoughts you have. I feel like SCOTUS just couldn't be bothered to elaborate, because if something I say on social media outside of school finds its way into the school and causes a disruption, animosity / general distraction to the school, I haven't done anything wrong. That's the problem, right? And we see that when it came to, I think, the student advocacy case. right? And then obviously we never want to be in a situation where we're like, you can't say this because we don't agree with this, right? You can't say anti-trans things. I don't want to be, although I am very, because this is like the big topic right now. I am somebody who believes hardcore in us not engaging, especially in schools, in any sort of viewpoint discrimination. So if you're going to let students, like I'm not a fan of, oh, well, you can't say anti-LGBT stuff because the kids then feel dangerous. Exterminate the Jews is different. So the language you use matters. If you're threatening people or you're even promoting violence, because I would say that's promoting illegal activity, then yes, but you should be able to express your views no matter how offensive they may be outside of, calling for violence or exterminate or that kind of stuff is different. Um, Even if it's disruptive to a degree. I mean, for sure, I'd have red flags if someone in a class after a lesson about slavery saying maybe we should try again. And I would distinguish between on campus versus off campus speech. There's a fine line between saying between boys will be boys and expulsion, and depending on the case, a lot of school admins will favor the expulsion to avoid legal issues. Well, the expulsion can also bring about legal issues. Great discussion of these cases. Thank you. I'm glad you've been joining. You're great. All right, guys. It is 8:02, so I got to get going to my other stream if you want to join me there. If not, then come back next week for maybe a sister episode. She might not want to. She will do a YouTube video with me and TikToks with me, but she might not want to sit here for an hour and a half. Okay, let me read this. Wow. I do think that's probably what I was reading. I do think it's weird that in high school everyone is mostly above 13, so no one would assume the types of language used in PG-13 movies would not be allowed. Like in PG-13 movies, you're allowed an F-bomb per movie, so I would love to hear a class president debate drop one. That's true. But even PG-13 movies, we needed to get our parent signature to watch them, even though we were all like 16. Follow Discord, everyone. Yay! Yes, I want to be more active on there. So, okay, I gotta run. If you're about that life, meet me there. Otherwise, bye.